So as I said, I am from St. Jude's JA Club in Temple and St. Jude's is around since the late 70s. So we're over 40 years in the community. But I suppose what I wanted to just show here about them, with this map is, I suppose, that typical scenario, I think, with GAA clubs, where they do play a central role in the community. And if you look around the different, points there within the map, you can see the secondary school, St. Macdara's, you can see the primary school, you can see the local church, you can see the local shops, you can see all the homes around the area. But smack bang in the middle of that is actually two GAA clubs, Fogs and Jude's, and also a soccer club, Temple Oak United. So, these sort of sporting organizations, these sort of clubs do play a very, very central role within communities. And that's not only true in Ireland, but it's actually true in many, many parts of the world. And it really just all depends on what the biggest activities within a particular culture are in terms of what is really probably available. I'm gonna just show you a quick video on that now, because I think it's a really good sort of story to basically to share, and it's about a place in America called Roseto. It'd be really worth your while looking up a little bit more about this at a later stage if you're interested. But just a quick 90-second video to give you an idea about the story of Roseto. So I hope you can sort of see and hear this.
In the 1960s, a US town called Roseto was an anomaly in America. No one under 50...
Hold on one sec.
In the 1960s, a US town called Roseto was an anomaly in America. No one under 55 had died of a heart attack or showed any signs of heart disease. The local death rate for men over 65 was half the national average. A team of researchers led by Dr. Stuart Wolfe considered whether this was because of their diet, location, family history, or exercise habits, but on the surface, nothing was different from the rest of America. In fact, the town was made up of Italian immigrants who worked in quarries and factories, smoked unfiltered cigars, and had dinner tables laden with rich Italian food. Rosetans of the 1960s still held on to their old world ways. It was normal to find 3 generations under the same roof. 80% of men in the town were members of at least one community group. They would gather in each other's kitchens, play cards, and simply talk. The conclusion? Rosetans were nourished by each other. Over the next decade, the multi-generational homes broke up, and by 1971, when opulent houses, expensive cars, and swimming pools appeared, the first person under the age of 55 died of a heart attack. By the 1980s, the rate of fatal heart attacks in Roseto was the same as the rest of the country. In the 1960s, a US town called Roseto was an anomaly in America. No one under 55 had died of a heart attack or showed any signs of heart disease. The local death rate for men over 65 was half the national average. A team of researchers led by Dr. Stuart Wolfe considered whether this was because of their diet.
So I suppose that just gives you a sort of indication of how there has been research done on this for quite a while, highlighting how actually community can have a massive impact on very physical outcomes, such as life expectancy, cardiac functioning, and I suppose longevity. So we do know from research around the world that community is actually very important to health. But I was sort of interested in this from an Irish perspective. And I suppose if you look at what are the key contributors or what are the key parts of communities in Ireland, and of course we do have religion has been a very strong part of Irish community, family being obviously key. The GAA is regarded as a key fabric of Irish society, other sports, friends, and I suppose then not uniquely to Ireland, but I suppose something that we are well known for in Ireland is actually how we socialise together, and Irish music, the pub, the get-together, the socialising. I suppose in many ways the crack, which is a sort of a key part of Irish society. But I suppose the GAA is an organisation that I suppose is very synonymous with Irish society and with Irish communities. And it exists the length of breadth of the country, from the smallest village to the biggest city. GAA is prolific within Irish society. So I wanted to look at, as part of some research that I was doing when I was in Tilda, I sort of wanted to look at whether or not engagement with community clubs was basically good for your health and well-being within an Irish context. So of course, Ireland is different to the US, it's different to Scotland, it's different to France. So you always have to sort of look at, whether or not certain health and well-being things that happen in one country do actually translate to actually it being better for an Irish population. So I decided to sort of look at this within Tilda data. So Tilda is the Irish Longitudinal Study of Aging. It's a massive study that's carried out through Trinity College Dublin. It has studied 8,500 Irish people over the last 10 years, and it has collected data from them every 2 years. And that data is very holistic and goes from who people live with, their financial well-being, their physical well-being, their mental well-being, everything and anything you could think of is actually collected by the actual Tilda study. In 2019, I was working there, and I asked for a question to be added to a questionnaire that they use. And that questionnaire asked about whether or not people were a member of their local club. And they could give details of what that actual club was. And what we found was that actually 58% of people over the age of 57 were basically, or over the age of 58, were a member of some form of club. So a very high percentage of Irish people were a member of these, and sort of identified as being a member of that sort of club. So, but we had different categories of clubs, and I suppose we have, the 42% that weren't involved in any club, but then we had the various different percentages that were involved in different ones. And we had sports club being the biggest one. So 26% of the people who were a member of a club were a member of a sports club. 11% were a member of a creative club, and that was things like art, dancing, bridge, all sorts of drama, all sorts of sort of creative clubs like that. And then 7 were a member of, 14% were a member of both, and then 7% were a member of another type of club. So that could have been a walking club or a Tai Chi club or something along those lines. The reason why I'm just giving you this information is that actually the results, it informs the results that you'll sort of see now. Obviously, as probably GAA people were quite interested in the supports element of it. So I think you'll be interested in these findings as we sort of go through them. Here's though a breakdown though of the sports clubs and the various different ones that people were a member of. And actually 17, the gym was the biggest proportion. So 17% of the people who were a member of a sports club were actually member of a gym. The GAA and golf basically came in after that. And then you had dance, bridge, singing. She had all sorts of different clubs then after that. But they were the types of clubs that people were involved in. Now, when we compare then what type of outcomes do we get? Now, this is back to not specific types of sports clubs, but back to the variable that shows no club, a sports club, a creative club, both types of clubs, or another type or another form of club. And what you actually find that among men, 58% of the sports club members rated their health as either excellent or very good. And that is actually 17% higher than the actual men who actually weren't in any club. And if you were to do a statistical comparison between those two results, you would find that that's actually significant. So male sports club members are actually significantly more, regard themselves as physically more healthy than actually people who aren't part of any club at all. The same is true for women. And actually there's a 19% difference between sports club members. So 59% of the sports club members, the female sports club members, regarded their physical health as excellent or very good. And that's compared to 40% of people who aren't in any club. So again, we're seeing a similar trend in terms of a benefit to physical health. Mental health was actually the same, particularly among men. So what you actually find here is that in terms of the levels of depression within within people who participated, categorized within the various different club types, you actually see that there's a 66% lower level of depression among male sports club members in comparison to people not in any club. And again, that's sort of highly significant, particularly as depression is quite a challenging issue for people over the age of 50 in Ireland. There's quite high levels of depression among people over the age of 50 in Ireland. And actually to achieve a result like this, where there's a 66% reduction by being a member of a sports club, is actually quite astounding. Then if we move on to actually men's quality of life, which is obviously a lot of the time, this is what people are more interested in. They're not as interested in health. But by doing, firstly, by multiplying the quality of life scores by 10 and then subtracting them from the no club score, the average no club score, we get actually the difference in the quality of life score for men in the various different clubs in comparison to those who are not in any club. And as you can see, there is an average 19-point difference. There is a 19-point better quality of life score, average better quality of life score among sports club members in comparison to basically those not in any club. There's also superiority for the other clubs, but the sports club seems to convey a higher level of improved quality of life than the other clubs. So that's the score for men, and a very similar finding is found for women. And actually, it's actually a higher mean difference. So the same method was used, multiply the quality of life scores by 10, and then subtract them from the no club. And you can actually see that there's nearly a 25-point average difference between the no club group and the sports club. So back to the Rosetta story, does being part of some form of community organization improve quality of life? Well, the conclusion from this result would be that yes, that would be the case for both men and women. The final part then that I looked at, or the final measure I looked at, was a measure of loneliness. And of course, this is something that's very prevalent at the moment, given the issue of COVID. And I suppose loneliness is something that we know has been a challenge for many of us. without the social contact and the ability to socialize with each other. Obviously, this was back in 2019, so this is completely pre-COVID times. But when we looked at a measure of loneliness and compared women across the scores, we didn't find any difference between the different group categories in loneliness among women. But among men, we found that those men who weren't a member of any club, the proportion of them that reported that they were moderately lonely or that they were lonely all of the time reached 7.5%, and that was less than half. That was more than double that of the sport club members. So male sport club members, only 3.3% of them said that they were lonely moderately or all of the time, whereas the no club members, that actually reached 7.5%. So again, can being a member of a community group impact loneliness? Yes, it can. But I suppose there's lots of different types of sports, and I wanted to look to see whether or not there were any differences between the sports, different types of sports club. And to be honest with you, we don't really find any. There is one interesting finding, and that is that being a member of a gym doesn't seem to actually provide the same level of I suppose, improvement or difference in comparison to the other types of sports. So in the middle there is basically what the no club members, the no club participants in the study reported. So in this slide, you've got 22% of those who aren't in a club, which is about 1 in 5. Rated their physical health as either fair or poor. Compared to that, only 1 in 10 of GAA club members rated their physical health as fair or poor. About something similar among golfers, an even lower percentage among people who were engaged in other types of sports. And then 12% of people who were engaged in 2 or more sports regarded their physical health as either fair or poor. But surprisingly to me, actually 24% of those who attend the gym actually rated their physical health as either fair or poor. When we look at mental health, we see another similar outcome. So again, the middle percentage there is the one for those that are not in any club. And for those who are not in any club, 13% rated their mental health as fair or poor. And in comparison to that, 5% of GAA club members did so, 6% of golfers did, 13% of gym club members did, 5% of people involved in other sports did so, and then also 5% of those involved in 2 or more sports did so. So again, a very significant difference between those who are involved in 4 of the club types, 4 of the sports club types, and actually those who are not in any club, and actually those who are involved in a gym. From a quality of life perspective, so we INTILD an instrument is used where the maximum score you can get is 36. And the average quality of life score among those people who were not involved in any club was 26.3. The average score among GAA club members was 2 points better at 28.3. And that mightn't sound a lot because it's actually only a 2-point difference. But actually, when you think about the range of score, it is actually nearly a 10% difference, which is actually quite significant in these types of studies. In terms of the golfers had an average score of 29.3. Gym members had the lowest quality of life of sports club members at 27. Those involved in other types of sports clubs had an average score of 28.4, and the same score was achieved among those who were involved in 2 or more types of sports club. So again, that particular area that a lot of us are interested in terms of, well, what will give us a good quality of life, you know, that will give us a sense of, you know, happiness from life. You know, again, we're seeing sports club, particularly GAA, golf, and the other types of sports being better than not being in any club, and also being better than being in a gym. So I suppose none of that is rocket science. It is as we would sort of expect. I suppose it's the reason why people engage in sports clubs is to get those rewards, and people would always communicate with their feet. If they weren't getting something from going to these clubs, well, they just wouldn't join them. But what's the catch? Why is this important? Well, the reason why this is so important is when we actually look at the levels of participation. And actually, the Sports Monitor report of 2019 said that 46% of the population regularly take part in sport, which represents 1.9 million regular participants, which is absolutely fantastic. You know, that it's a really, really good level. However, one of the things that is really important for Ireland, you know, both now and in the future, is, you know, our aging population. There's a very large number of people who are thankfully going to live now well into their 80s and 90s. And their health is very important, because we don't want to just live for longer. We want to be healthy and have a good quality of life for longer. But when we actually look at the data from the Wave 5 question that I mentioned earlier on, which was also gathered in 2019, we actually see that 29% of 58 to 64-year-olds are actually a member of a sports club, but that declines by over 10% by the time we get to 75-year-olds and older. Now, some people might sort of say, oh, well, look, 75 years, so that's old. Well, it is and it isn't, because actually we're now getting to the stage where actually most people will live into their 80s, and soon enough that will actually, within the next 20 years, that'll be people living to their 90s. So that'll be sort of 15 years after 75 years and older. So it's very, very important to sort of be considering, I suppose, this question, which is, how can we retain people in sports clubs as they age? How can we make sure that actually people don't see that, well, it's time to hang up my boots, it's time to no longer be involved, I'm old, I've nothing else to offer? And the question then that myself and Daithi have discussed from time to time is that, well, is there a role for social games? And I suppose the big thing is that what potential is there for social rounders to assist with this quest to try and make sure that people stay involved with sports clubs as they age and achieve all of the benefits that with this research sort of shows that they will attain from it. So on that note, I will hand over to Daithi and let Daithi take you through the how piece, because I think that more than anything else is what people are most interested in.
Okay, so thanks very much for that, Niall. Some interesting statistics. I'm just going to try and share my screen here. If people can give me a thumbs up, or Niall, I can see you on the screen, so give me a thumbs up if you can see it. Okay, great. The bad news is I don't have many statistics for this presentation. The only one I can really quote is that we played our first ever Rounders match 2 years ago, and we had a 100% record after beating the FINA in our first ever match, and then we didn't win a game for at least 2 years after that. So that's the only statistic I'm going to give you tonight, and I'm going to try and get into more around the actual practical side of Rounders. So if you just give me 1 sec there now. So just a little bit about myself to start off with. I'm involved in a club in the inner city of Dublin called Kevin's. We're around since 1902. We're primarily a hurling and camogie club, And a couple of years ago, we decided to embark on a healthy club plan. And we initially set up we initially set up hurling, and we then decided actually there was very little uptake from the female sort of community. So we said, okay, what can we do differently to increase participation? So we came up with the idea of social rounders, and we said, look, we'll give this a go, we'll give it a trial. And this is really a presentation around the why and the how, and we'll talk through some practical examples. So, give me one sec there now. So, first of all, we came up with this concept of Dublin social rounders and an initiative, and this kind of stemmed out of the individual clubs doing social rounders, and I suppose a need to create more teams in order to build momentum so local teams could play against each other. But basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to welcome all adults of all ages and all abilities to participate. Rounders is it's a non-contact sport, and it's non-mainstream. So it offers GAA clubs something slightly different to the usual hurling, football, camogie. And it's an innovative way to get, I suppose, mothers and fathers playing together. So what we found was in our club is we wanted to get parents playing. So in order to keep children participating in sport, we felt that it was important to see their parents participating in some way, shape or form. But as a hurling club, we kind of came to the realization that people aren't going to start playing hurling in their mid-30s. That's just not going to happen. So we said, okay, how are we going to do this? And we came up with rounders. That is now, I suppose, expanded to what we're calling a Dublin Social Rounders Initiative. So benefits of participation. I know Niall kind of talked about mental health and some stuff like that. But I suppose on a practical level, what we're finding is it's a great family-orientated sport. So what we're finding now, like for example, our club secretary joined our club back in the early 90s, has never played with the club. His daughter, his son and his granddaughter have all played with the club, but he had never played never actually put on the jersey and togged out until 2 years ago when we set up the rounders. And Patsy's been a great addition to the team. He's probably he'll kill me for saying this, but he's in his late 60s, and he's one of our top rounders players. So it's a great way of getting family together, so that we don't have certain members of the family sitting at home. So it's a way of, I suppose, socializing and being active together. As I mentioned, it's suitable for retired and older players. I think Nafina, St. Finians and ourselves have players who are over the age of 60 and who actively participate. And it's a great sport for diversity and inclusion. What we're finding in our club, we set it up for the parents internally, but what we're finding now is because people actually understand rounders because they're more familiar with baseball and softball as an international sport, what we're finding now is we're getting a lot more interest from people who wouldn't traditionally join a hurling or a camogie club. And I mean that in a way that I suppose it's relevant to both Irish people and non-Irish people. There's a lot of people in Ireland who would never have played hurling. So why would they come and join a hurling club? So it does attract people from, I suppose, non-traditional hurling counties. One thing is that there's no tackling. So it's non-contact. Is that and underage as well, an opportunity to participate in a sport that there's no physical contact, because we have to realize not everybody's into the physical contact. Very good for social distancing as well. That wasn't our intention, but what we found during the COVID lockdown is that we were able to play rounders a little bit longer than, we could actually play a match with rounders, whereas you couldn't train in hurling or football because there was physical contact, but you can actually play a game and keep your social distance. So benefits of participation, healthy club project. I set this up myself as a healthy club project within the club. We've since expanded. I'll let you read from the slides yourselves. But effectively, if you're a healthy club officer and you're looking for a project, this ticks the boxes. because it provides physical, mental, and social health benefits. So a little bit about Kevin's and what we did, just to kind of try and bring the story alive. As I mentioned, in 2019, we got together. It actually came together as a discussion at a Christmas party where a couple of parents were talking, and I said, well, would you be interested in playing rounders? What we noticed was everybody's face lit up. A huge amount of people had played rounders at some form as a child and had great memories doing it. So they said, listen, we'll give it a go. So what we did was we set a date. You can see here the picture up in the top left-hand side is actually our first ever team photo. A few people had legged it at that stage, so they weren't in the photo, but we probably had roughly around 13 or 14 people on the first day. And we contacted GA Rounders. They sent a coach, Mike Lang, who's from Nafina, came over to give us an introduction. Thankfully he did, because I actually hadn't a clue as to how this worked. I mean, I'd played as a kid, you know, I knew it was a bat and ball, I knew there was a couple of I knew there was a couple of bases, but I didn't really know the rules or how it worked. And one of the first questions we had, and this comes up in nearly every session from every newcomer, is, you know, if you catch the ball with one hand, is everybody out? And we were told, well, that's actually street rounders. So now there's a thing, you know, you can play GA rounders or you can play street informal rounders. But so we were learning the rules as we went along. And what we did was we just got together. Mike came over, explained some of the rules to us. He left us with a bat, and we played for a few weeks. And then I rang the GA rounders and I said, listen, I'd like to play a match against somebody. So basically what we did then was we organized a game against Nafina. Nafina had us over. We played a match actually on a cricket pitch. It was my first time playing a GA match on a cricket pitch. We just had great fun. We had I think about 9 people over. We played a mixed match. What we found very interesting, or what I found very interesting, was none of us had actually played rounders before. And then I got a phone call, and you'll see there in the bottom left-hand corner, from an Indian chap. And he rang me and he said, listen, you know, I'm very interested in joining your rounders team. I said, that's great. And I said, you know, with my unconscious bias, I said, well, you know, the skills are easily transferable from cricket to rounders. But then he informed me that he'd actually played rounders before. So here we were, a bunch of Irish people, and the only people who had played this Irish sport was a guy from India. Pradeep had actually played rounders when he lived in Athlone, and he played for a team in Roscommon. So it was great to have Pradeep to come over and actually show us the ropes and show us how it's actually played. So what you will find is that when you set up rounders, there are people out there who are actually very, very interested in playing, would like to play a sport, and are looking for an opportunity to get involved. Since Pradeep has joined, we have received multiple phone calls from lots of people outside of the club who have joined. We actually registered 30 people last year. We have a mix of people from Argentina, Spain, America, and we even have people from Mayo and from Donegal in the hurling club, which is kind of unusual. So what we're finding is a lot of new people are joining the club as a result. An interesting fact that I am seeing is that in Dublin, we are actually, even though we're inner city, we're in Dolphin's Barn, we have people traveling from Tala, Stepaside, I think the Holt Road, and the Clontarf Road, and Dunleary to come in and play with us. So what we're finding is that there is definitely demand outside of the inner city. So this is not something that's it's popular because there's lots of people in the inner city playing. There are people all over the county who are looking for teams, and the reason they're joining Kevin's is because there's very few other teams out there. So there is demand, but I suppose it's about setting up, and these people will come. They didn't come in the first year, but certainly in the second year it grew. The best place to watch rounders is on YouTube, and I just have a little link here. If it works, I'll play it. And this is just a little video about what we did from a practical point of view. Can everybody see the YouTube video coming up?
No, you need to open it in a different
Okay.
in a different window. It won't come up on that one.
Okay. But what I will do is I'll see if I can play it near the end so we can show a visual. I won't mess around with the but there's 4 links here. So there's one to our social rounders and how we set up. We have a link to the highlights to the GA of the All Ireland final played a couple of years ago. Limekiln Rounders Club have also recorded a number of All Irelands and games and put them up on YouTube. And then there's also a GA Rounders YouTube site, which is worth looking at. So it's the reason I'm saying this to you is because there's very little sort of video footage of games. It's not like that RTE are knocking on our door looking to show live matches. So when we started off, we found it very hard to actually find video coverage. We'll try and play that near the end, and just to kind of give you a visual. So how do we get started? So as I said, it arose out of a conversation at a Christmas party. I've spoken to a guy in Monaghan who happened to mention to me they have a team called Carrick, and they started the club as a result of a conversation at a barbecue. So it's about getting people together to see if they're interested. And the reason I'm stressing that is because the first point here I have here is email GA Rounders Secretary and request a coach to get you started day one. There's probably a step before that. You have to kind of show that there's a bit of interest. You only need sort of about 10 to 15 people to get this started. If there is interest within the club, then email GA Rounders Secretary, and what we'll do is we'll coordinate somebody to come across. As I mentioned, Mike Lang came over to us. He's from Nafina. I think when St. Finian started up last year, a guy called Pat Barnaval came down from Laois to do some demonstrations and get them started. So what we want to do is we want to help the clubs get up and running on day one, and so email the GA Rounders Secretary and we'll coordinate a coach on the first day. What you need to do is you need to find a space or a field with around 80 meters squared. Now, if you're zoning in on social rounders, I think because we know that pitch availability is a premium. So what we would say to you is that a half a pitch will suffice on the first night if it's social. If your senior Division 1 hurling team turn up on the first night, maybe you'll need a bit more space because they'll be belting the ball a bit further. But I think generally speaking, a senior pitch will suffice, but ideally 80 meters squared is what we recommend. You'll need 5 bases. So what we did was we got some carpet, we cut it into 64 centimeter square units, and they're the bases. That's basically it. On the first day, you can use jumpers, you can use cones, you can use whatever you want. GA Rounders will supply a bat, but what we found was it's always good to bring a hurley and a tennis racket on day one, because what happens is people are actually quite shy or a bit nervous about not being able to hit the ball, and it's about making them feel comfortable. But I can guarantee you, once they get up there and once you get them onto the field, they'll use the bat. But it's almost like having a comfort blanket there, and once you get them, you get them to give it a go and they're okay. We use adult schlitters, but you can use a tennis ball on day one. You have to remember this is social, so we're not trying to win any sort of All Ireland rounders competitions. The idea is to get people playing. If you're using a schlitter, we'll advise you to have wear hurling helmets. If you use tennis balls on day one, you should be okay. But for health and safety reasons, it would be a regulation to have hurling helmets with the regular visors. So equipment needed. We've covered the playing surface. We've covered the GA pitch. 1 wooden bat will suffice. Okay, don't go out and sort of try to buy the most expensive baseball bat from America. A couple of $100s to bring it over. Wooden bat costs in a region of about 20 euros. GA Rounders can supply them. 2 hurling helmets, as I mentioned, and I'd say about half a dozen adult schlitters. But as I said, you can use tennis balls. What we also found was using the big Go Game schlitters. They were also very good on day one. The bigger the ball, the easier it is to hit it. And then, as I said, 5 bases. You don't necessarily need the carpet on day one. The idea is to get people to run around the bases, use jumpers, use cones, you know, to make, you can make squares using sort of those flat cones is another way of doing it. So the playing area and positions. So this is a kind of an overview as to how the pitch looks. I mentioned earlier on, the game is 9-a-side. The official game is 9-a-side, but you can actually play with 7. Okay, so if you have 14 on day one, that will suffice. Okay. The bases are 25 meters apart. So it's in a base. You can use either a square or a kind of a diamond shape to visualize this. Okay, but usually what we do is we go to the 21-yard line and we use the existing lines to help us out. Okay, but the bases are 25 meters apart. We have one team bats and the other team fields. And what I've done here is I've outlined where the positions are. So the fielding team have a catcher who stands behind the batter. We have a pitcher who throws the ball. I've just been informed in the last few months that the Dubs call it pitching and country folk call it bowling, but it basically means the same thing. We have people standing on each base, first, second, and third. We have an infielder or a shortstop who kind of roams around the square. And then you have people who are outfields, left outfield, center outfield, and right outfield. So they're the people far out for when, you know, if you have a good batter, you know, the ball will go far, and it's up to them to kind of position themselves accordingly. So basic rules to get started. An official game lasts 5 innings, but for social, you can play for as long as you want. Okay, what we found was our first few friendlies, we played sort of 3 innings because we were stopping and starting and learning the rules. You pick your batting order. So this is kind of important in terms of you have nine people batting, and the way an innings works is you bat an order of 1 to 9. And as soon as 3 people are knocked out, then that innings is over. So for example, if you start off the first innings and batter number 1, 2, and 3 get knocked out, the next innings you start off with batter number 4. So it's rotational. So you're not always starting at batter number 1 every time. And that's great because what happens then is everybody gets a go. So it's not number 1 gets the bat first every time. Okay. So each team bats until 3 people are out, which I mentioned. Each batter is allowed 3 good balls. And basically 3 good balls is the ball has to be thrown between the knee and the shoulder. If the ball is thrown at somebody's head, it's a bad ball. If it's thrown at somebody's foot, it's a bad ball. If it lands in front of the batting surface, it's a bad ball. So you get 3 good throws. And if the pitcher throws 3 bad balls, but then you get to walk on. Okay. But they're the initial rules. They're the rules that you need to use literally when you're starting. So what we suggest then is that you learn the rest of the rules as you go along. So some tips, some lessons learned. Don't try to learn all the rules in day one. It's actually quite a technical game. So learn as you play. So I've outlined some of the rules that you need to get yourselves up and running. And then when you get the GAA rounders coach to come along, they'll show you some of the technical errors you're making and some of the rules that you can apply as you go along. What we found is that numbers will fluctuate. So, don't get disheartened if they drop. The reality is rounders is not for everybody. And what we found in the club was that some people were coming along just to be because they were a great crack and everybody wants them there. But, we had some people who were there who just did not have a sporting bone in their body and they were physically uncomfortable playing the game. That's fine but what we would always say is come up, give it a go. If you don't like it, we won't take offense. But you have to get people up to try it. It's like what you tell your kids about, eating the right food. How do you know you don't like it if you don't try it? That's the kind of the way we work in our own social rounders. Keep getting the word out via social media. And flyers. I was amazed. Even last year, a couple of parents came up to me and said, "Oh, we've been watching what's going on Facebook for the last 12 months, but we've been kind of embarrassed to get involved, but now we're ready to get involved." But because they're reading the reports, so keep even though you're putting out stuff on Twitter or on Facebook, keep putting it out, even though people don't react to it. People are watching it. We would really recommend that you register with the GA Rounders, because what will happen then is GA Rounders there's a few things will happen. They'll register you on your website, and as we found, once you get registered on the GA website, the GA Rounders website, people will contact you from outside. Okay, you will get people who are interested and looking for clubs to join. The other point is that in order to play other teams, you do need to be registered with GA Rounders. Now, it is quite cheap it's not like the cost that you would find with hurling or camogie, but in order to play official games, you do need to register with the GA Rounders. The one thing we'll say to you is, don't make it a commitment. Some people refer to this as training. I can't make training tonight. It's not training. It's just a game of social rounders. Get straight into the game, have a bit of crack with it, do your warm-ups or whatever, but it's not training. And don't encourage people to commit. People will commit when they're ready. So what we have is we have a number of players who drop in and drop out. But if you make it a commitment thing, you'll never see them again. I've mentioned there, don't call it training. And then there'll be different levels of fitness and ability. So, do a fun warm-up from a physical perspective, and also get people to do a kind of a warm-up so they get to know each other. It's actually quite daunting for somebody to come into a group assuming that everybody knows each other. So, if somebody has made the effort to come up and join your club, make sure you reach out to them, make sure you make them feel welcome, because it's something that you can often forget to do because you're busy laying out the pitches or whatever. But make sure you have somebody there that friendly face. There's always one person in the club that has to say hello to everybody. Give them the job of making sure that they're in charge of the welcoming committee. So then the other point is you can align this to your healthy club plan. Okay, so what we've done in our club is we've focused in on adults in the club. We've actually focused in on the juvenile section and said to advertise it amongst the nursery and the underage teams. And that's where most of our players have been coming from. We don't go after the senior hurlers in our club. We don't go after the senior camogie players. They're already training 2 or 3 nights a week. They're already, they've already got their commitments. So what we've done is we've aligned this to our healthy club plan and try to bring in new members. As I said, we registered 30 members last year, and there's probably another 10 or 15 that we didn't register, people who kind of come and go. So we've had good numbers throughout the year. The other point I'd like to make is don't take yourselves too seriously. Focus on inclusion and the fun. It is actually great crack, but you will get people from time to time who'll come up, and after week 2, they'll want to be the best player, and sometimes that can spill over into people taking themselves too seriously. What we've done in the last 12 months is we've started to enter, I suppose, competitions, because we're now beginning to see that there are actually, I suppose, a group of younger members who want to be competitive. And what we're now doing is we're not, we all meet together, but it's going to come to a stage where we're now going to have a kind of a competitive team and a social team. If you have a strong or confident group, then consider entering into a GA Rounders tournament. So we were actually thrown into the GA Rounders tournament as a novice tournament every year, and we jumped into it. We got absolutely whipped in our first year, but last year we recruited a few new players, and we went and we bet the teams that bet us last year. So it is, you will learn the game quite quickly. So the good news is there are a number of clubs already registered. We have St. Finian's the Swords, who are probably our newest group. They are still classified, I suppose, as social. They haven't actually played a competitive match yet, because they registered, I think, in the second half of last year when the competitions were already on. There's a new club in Temple Oak called the Little Lambs, or Nahuam Bioga, and they're an all-girls team. Limekiln, they're probably the most experienced club in Dublin. They compete at mixed men's and ladies. They're actually the most decorated club, I think, in Dublin. They've won a number of senior All-Irelands at all levels. We have Nafina, who probably would be after Limekiln, probably would be the most established club. They compete at men's, ladies, and mixed tournaments, and you know, they've won a junior All-Ireland or a novice All-Ireland, as it's called. We've managed to beat them once. We haven't beaten them since. So our 2022 plan, our 2021 plan is to beat them at some stage. And then of course there's ourselves, and we primarily focus on the mixed teams, because what we wanted to try and do is get sort of, you know, partners together or men and women together to play as a collective. This year the numbers are, I suppose, the interest is so big, we probably have a men's team and hopefully a ladies team as well. So what's the plan for Dublin? So this particular session was actually, when myself and Niall spoke, we had initially planned not just to do a presentation, but to do a demonstration game and actually get people into a field and show them what it looks like. But unfortunately, the lockdown kind of put a stop to that. So we had plans to sort of go to Parnell Park and put on a demo game. So we do still have plans to do that, but it's kind of, we're just waiting for the COVID guidelines to give us the all clear. So, but we are hoping to launch in April, and we'll organise a demo game. We'll get people involved. What we'd like clubs to do is register their interest with the secretary, so we know that you're interested. And then in May, what we'll do is we'll start organising introductory sessions. June to August, what we'll do is we'll start organising a couple of friendlies. So in other words, you will have done your introductory session. You would have met yourselves 2 or 3 different times just to kind of get the lay of the land to see who's interested. And then what we'll do is we'll actually run a few games. So the way it worked with ourselves and Nafina was we went over to play them in a friendly. I mean, the friendly, it's not like a hurling or a camogie match or a football match. The friendly consisted of Nafina stopping the game and showing us what we were doing wrong and showing us skills and showing us the rules. It was kind of like a quasi, coaching session with them. And that's the type of thing that we would plan to do with your first friendly, is to get you playing so you get familiar with the rules and so on and so forth. So it's not like where, we bring you onto the pitch in a football match and beat the living daylights out of you and pat you on the back and send you off home to improve yourselves. It doesn't work that way around. It's very, I suppose it's a very encouraging way of getting you involved. And then what we're going to plan to do is in September, October, we're going to arrange a blitz for ladies, men's, and mixed. Our priority is mixed, if I'm being honest. We're not going to discourage ladies or men's teams, but we're going to try and prioritize the mixed teams. We do have ladies teams in Dublin, so if somebody says, listen, we set up a social rounders team and all we have is a ladies team or all we have is a men's team, that's fine. We'll organize some friendlies, but we would, I suppose, encourage the mixed teams more so than anything else. So resources and contacts, who to reach out to. So what we've got somebody on the north side, Mike Lang, who's on this call here. We've left his number here. Myself on the south side, and then we've got the referees coordinator. You don't need to worry about a referee starting off. That's the least of your worries. We need to get you up and running first. And then we have social media. So we have the GA Healthy Club in Leinster GA Rounders Facebook. We have the official GA Rounders Twitter and Instagram accounts. And if you're on Twitter or on social media, pop in the social rounders hashtag or the GA rounders hashtag, and there's loads of information on Twitter on that. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and play the video, but maybe Niall, if you, sorry, 1 sec there now. So maybe if we want to just go to a few questions and answers, or Niall, if you wanted to kind of say a few words, I'll play around the background to see if I can play this little, if I get the little video up and running, and then we go to Q&A.
Perfect. So we've a question about, I suppose, sorry, how to get the numbers up is the first question. And I suppose we sort of covered that really in the sort of the strategy, as you said, to organize, you know, a day. I suppose one of the things that comes to my mind, and I'm not sure what will happen this year, but I suppose family fun days, when family fun days happen, it might be a good activity to sort of have, you know, as part of that.
Yeah, I see that question here from Rachel. Yeah, I think it's a good question. So what we did is, like, you can put, I would go at it a few different ways. Okay, so first of all, you have your social media, you know, put it up on Facebook, put it up on Twitter, and all that sort of stuff. Put a few posters in the area. If it's linked to a family fun day, or if it's linked to a particular event, it'll be easier to get people in. I think that would be a good way. But if I'm being honest with you, the best way of getting people up is to ring around a few people, ring around the usual suspects. There's always going to be 4 or 5 people there who you can pick up the phone to get it up and running. So if you have a core group of people to make sure it happens, and then what will happen then, everybody else then is a bonus, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what I did was, if I'm being honest, I made sure I had 10. So my golden rule is, as soon as I have 10 people interested, then I'll go and organize something. That's kind of the way I particularly work it. We set up a club choir there back in January. I did the same thing. I said, as soon as 10 people come to me to tell me there's interest, then I'll flick the switch and we'll set a date, and then we'll push. So I would say a bit of human contact is number one. Get your network. Get your social media, get your flyer, depending on you know, if you're a village or a town, I think, you know, going to the local shops. But Niall, as you say, like a sports day or an open day will be a great way of doing that. I think there's a club called Good Counsel who are very close to us. I believe that's what they did. And they played rounders on that open day. I wasn't at it now, but this is what the GA rounders told me. Said it was very exciting, where they ended up having a whole load of teams playing. So that is a good way of doing it. Then
we have, when does the novice tournament take place, Daithi?
Yeah, so last year it took place, or sorry, 2 years ago it took place in August. I suspect that'll be probably happening in around sort of September, October. So when we went into it, it was held in a place called Time Park, in which you're from St. Jude, so it's basically on the other side of where St. Jude's play. So what we've been doing is we've been talking to Limekillen. They're a rounders club who are based in Time Park, and we'll probably organise something in around sort of September, October. So the idea is that you play a few friendlies leading up to it, so you can kind of orientate yourselves. What we did was we played our first friendly, I think, on the Wednesday before the tournament. And the Fina were very kind to us. They let us win. That got out on social media. All the country clubs found out that we were fairly handy, and then they took us all seriously, and then they whipped us. So we'll never make that mistake again.
And just about those friendlies, somebody's asking a question. Just self-referee them, or which way is?
So what we do is there is an element of self-refereeing in it. So what we did is, when we went over to Nafina, actually, this was new territory for us, because we were used to, as a hurling club, turning up and having the independent referee there.
Yeah.
So we did actually find that a little bit unusual that we hadn't organised a referee, but actually it really works in rounders, because basically what the Nafina guys did was they were coaching us and playing with us, you know. So So basically what the idea is, we would pair you up with an experienced club. So we wouldn't put 2 inexperienced clubs together that don't know the rules. You know, you'd come over to Kevin's, or you go to Nafina or Limekillen, and you know, and then if you're a decent, you know, if you're actually quite a strong standard, we'll ring the referee coordinator and actually get a referee over. But yeah, self-refereeing is the best way to go at the start.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we played our friendly matches with Kevin's, that I think I've refereed both of those.
Yeah, that's
both
right.
of those matches. And that unfortunately, I'm the only qualified referee in my club who was available to do it. And we did use it as sort of a lot of coaching points during those games. So you can self-referee your own internal club sessions. You can ask if a volunteer referee will come and maybe help you out. That's sort of like a bit of coaching and a referee for if you do have someone come to a social session. One lesson learned I'd like to share on how not to implement rounders is to don't get ahead of yourself and don't go full force. At Nafina, we started in 2016. And we immediately entered three teams at senior level because that was the only level available at the time. And we managed to play 4 seasons in a row, struggling to field teams and traveling around the country, playing well-seasoned senior teams week in, week out. So what I'd say, you need the good weather. So Daithi's plan to do it in the summer is perfect, so that people will enjoy the sessions, and then you ease them into playing in the novice competition if they're up for it. Don't force the competitive aspect until you get a solid core of you need probably 10 men and 10 women to be able to field a mixed team consistently, and then to move on to fielding individual teams for men and ladies.
Okay, thanks for that, Mike. I see another question here from Rachel. It's not a stupid question at all, actually. So let me just try and interpret the question. Did you have to ask the GA committee for permission to start a rounders team? Yes and no. So officially, yes. So from a Kevin's point of view, we set the rounders up as a social rounders project, as a healthy club project. I happen to be the healthy club officer driving that. So I did go to the club committee to say, this is the next healthy club initiative. It just happens to be social rounders. It was social hurling, the month before that. It was a walking club the following month. It was just another project. So from that point of view, yes, I didn't get much pushback, probably because I was the healthy club officer, and it was pitched as a healthy club activity. And we used the healthy club activity to see actually, was there any, we actually, being genuine, we thought we were going to do this for 3 or 4 weeks. That's all we thought we were going to do. We're still here 2 years later, and now we're trying to encourage other clubs to do it. So the no part of the answer is you can actually set up your own club, if it comes to that. So there's a club in Dublin called Nahuan Bioga. They're not an existing GAA club. They set up their own club. Limekiln are a rounders only club. They're not part of any existing GAA club as well. So if there's resistance within your own club, you can set up your own GAA rounders club. You don't have to be part of a GAA club. The only challenge you have, Rachel, I think, is getting pitch time. So certainly in Dublin, I think you're from a Meath club, if my memory serves me correctly, but certainly in Dublin, the pitch availability is at a premium. It's probably, pitch availability is probably the biggest challenge, if I'm being honest with you. Everything else is a very, very simple way to set up. It doesn't take that long to find a bit of carpet and a bat and a few balls, but actually getting pitch availability is the challenge. So that's the key thing, I think.
Can I just ask on that though, Daithi? Isn't it though true to say that, this is, somebody's come in there, Aidan's come in on that with the evenings. Essentially, it's not like the way, I suppose, certain certain things are dictated by the GAA, which is, i.e., your senior matches have to happen at a particular time and all of this sort of stuff. Like essentially, if you get two teams that are willing to come together and play against each other, you know, you could do it on a Monday night. You could do it on a, you know, whenever.
So we intentionally picked a Friday night for two reasons. One, it's a social rounders team, and we dream someday of actually implementing the social element of it. And we thought, well, actually, a Friday night would be a good time to, you know, we pack up our rounders gear and might go for a few pints or have a barbecue or something like that. So we think Friday night's good from a social aspect. But also, what I find is the Friday nights are usually the nights that the senior hurling team aren't training. So it's usually the best night for pitch availability, because there's usually a match on a Saturday or a Sunday. So, you know, it's a rare occasion that your senior team are training on the Friday night. So it actually ticks all boxes the Friday night. One, it is actually a night for social. You know, nobody, well, depending on who you are, but I certainly don't go out midweek for a drink. But I would recommend Friday night. But it, you know, the one thing I did is, once I got my core group of 10 people together, I asked them that question, you know, because if you need a kind of a fulcrum to kind of to get it going. And if it doesn't, if you have 10 people and you're the only one that's available that night, well, then it's obviously not going to work as well.
Yeah, and just to say as well, just like to reiterate Daithi's point about it being attached to sort of a healthy club initiative or a healthy club program. I mean, Daithi has presented this at the Leinster Roadshow. He was invited by the community department, the Croke Park community department, to come and present this at the Leinster Roadshow. And there's very much a support around this concept of social games and social rounders as being a good healthy club activity. You know, there's lots of different healthy club activities that one can engage in, be it sort of you know, mental fitness, be it you know, older people initiatives or whatever, but this is certainly regarded as one of them, and it could certainly align. So if you can, one of the things, a good person to maybe rope into this could be your healthy club officer, and they could discuss then with the executive about making this part of the healthy club initiative if they hadn't thought of it already.